Hello, everyone. So my name is Gordon Rodseth, as you heard, and today I'll be talking about the dark side of UX. So firstly, what is UX? As UX and UI designers, we design systems that allow users to interface with a system and allow you to do something. As part of this, we use buttons, colors, like psychological concepts to kind of drive the users in a specific direction. But the problem is when this goes dark, that happens when we manipulate the user. So it's the difference between allowing a user to easily buy something and tricking somebody into buying something so that because they have no way out. So the manipulation happens on a couple of levels. First, you look at the cognitive biases of a user. So by understanding the unexamined biases within the user, the designers can manipulate the way that we present information and frame information so that the users are steered towards certain decisions. There's also persuasive design, which appeals to the user's emotions, their ambitions and desires, so that we can create a sense of urgency and entice the user to do something impulsively. So like, I have to do this now, otherwise I won't be able to do it. And I have to do this now because I have to get this done. And then there's habit formation. So this establishes patterns or routines that influence the user into engaging into something without really thinking about it. So now I'll go into a couple of examples of these in practice. One of the very common examples is the infinite scroll. You'll see this on any social media that you use nowadays, like Twitter, Instagram, whatever. You just scroll. And what that does is it generates a habit in the user. So you develop the habit of just going like this with your thumb. And then instead of actually thinking, I want to engage with the next post, you just form the habit. And then you get stuck in a loop where you're just doing that and not thinking about what you're doing. This is especially kind of bad for people with ADHD or other kind of mental disorders like that, where this can actually become physically addictive because you're just getting stimulus continually. Another example is disguised ads. For example, you have on Google, if you search something, you get the top results are going to be sponsored. They do label it as sponsored, but if you look at it, everything you see it's designed like a regular search result. So even though it's labeled sponsored, it's like the language of the site is telling you this is just another search result, and it appears at the top of your feed so that you kind of, your information architecture is designed so that you think that the top result is going to be the most relevant or most important. So it kind of tries to trick you into clicking on that. This is kind of an old practice. It's been around for a while, so most of us are used to it. So now you're just going to scroll past the top results. But when this started, it's very kind of convincing. And that's why they have to add things like the sponsored at the top very clearly so that you aren't really fooled or tricked. There's also confirm shaming, which is a better example of using language to fool people. So instead of just having an opt-out button or a kind of I'm not interested button, it'll get you to say something else like, no, I'm not into savings, or no, I hate you, I'm a bad person. And you have to click on that instead of, yes, I'm a good person, to continue on. So that's kind of trying to manipulate your emotions into kind of carrying on with what they want you to do. There's also pre-selection. You see this a lot with cookie things nowadays. It will give you a little kind of pre-selected option, and you have to kind of just passively accept that. And you can change it. So technically you are choosing it, but it's still, you're biased towards not changing anything because I don't want to mess with anything on the site. I know people here are more tech savvy, but most people will just say, no, I don't want to get into the weeds of how a site works. That's scary to me, so I'll just accept, move on. But yeah, this is kind of very common practice. I actually found this example when I was reading an article about how pre-selecting is bad. So like you see, it's everywhere. And then you get privacy zuckering. This is the last one I'm going to talk about. This is, yeah, you all know it's named after Zuckerberg, the creator of Facebook. This kind of manipulates you into giving up your personal information. So Facebook, well, people found with Facebook that they were being encouraged to share more information that they actually needed to. And Facebook would disguise this as help us find your friends, or help us improve your experience. We're doing this for you. We want your information so that we can provide a better service, not so we can sell it on to other people. And this kind of got it's very famous now that Facebook is very predatory with how they use the user's data. So it's very manipulative. And again, a lot of people here are tech savvy, but less tech savvy people will kind of just go into this without thinking. And they'll go and think, okay, this is fine. I'll just let them have my data and then not know what happens with that data. And they'll end up with a lot of spam and a lot of predatory stuff that preys on they'll use these other principles to kind of capture them in. So this leaves us with some ethical implications. The first is that this is very effective. A study in the Journal of Legal Ethics found that consumers were 4 times more likely to sign up for a predatory scam if they use dark patterns to influence them. So that creates kind of an imbalance of power, because we can make users this much more likely to actually do something that they wouldn't normally do. And we, as designers, we've studied and we spend hours and hours thinking, how do we design this? We put that much thought into it, where the user is just seeing this for a second. So they don't think about what goes behind it. But so they only think about it for a second, but we've thought about it for hours. And that creates the imbalance of power, where we're kind of manipulating and coercing people into doing something that they don't really want to do. It also harms the user ultimately, because normally this will create spam and just create a worse experience for them, and which ultimately leads to an erosion of trust, because the user will decide, okay, I didn't really have a good experience. Facebook just sends me weird spam. I just get weird posts on there. So I don't really trust this. There's a lot of fake news or whatever. So I don't really trust this, and I'm not going to come back to it. And that ultimately hurts you in the end. There's also the legal and regulatory landscape. A lot of countries have a system that punishes false advertising, and that can and is applied to the use of these patterns. So in the United States, you have the FTC, which fines companies for deceptive marketing tactics and failing to disclose hidden fees. The CMA in the United Kingdom also does a similar thing. A lot of these are already illegal under certain laws, and there are laws developing to go further than that and further kind of discourage this kind of stuff. So the Poppy Act in South Africa, that's another example. This kind of prevents the unlawful collection, retention, and dissemination of personal information. The designers also have to be aware that when they're doing stuff like this, they are opening themselves and their company up to legal problems. So this brings us to some ethical design principles that designers need to keep in mind when they're kind of moving forward. The first is informed consent. So you don't trick the user into accepting something. You tell them, okay, this is what we're looking for. This is why we need it. You give them that information and let them make the decision themselves without tricking them by having a pre-selected box that they just blindly click. And there's also user empowerment that comes in, giving them the ability to say no to these kinds of things so that they don't end up kind of disliking this kind of thing. And so they don't end up getting a bad impression of your app or your website or whatever. And then transparency, that I talked about a bit, but just letting them know what you want all of this information for, why you need it, so that they can make the informed decisions that they need. This also helps with accessibility, so that kind of disabled users can have a better experience on their site. And this would help with a better general overall experience. So yeah, that's the end. Hopefully you can come away with this with a better understanding of what these techniques are, so you can avoid them in the future and they don't have the same effect on you. And yeah, hopefully you have a better understanding of everything.